Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. How are you? And then I need to press another button to make sure everything is functional. And once we have confirmed that all places are where they should be, that means I can... Hey Pan, hey Chris, hello. Now we've got everybody on board. You're good? I'm glad that you're doing good. I hope that I can make a good day even better by providing you a calm and relaxing and quiet space to relax and maybe fall asleep if you need it. That's another sip of water, and I will begin reading. Chapter 19. London was our present point of rest. We determined to remain several months in this wonderful and celebrated city. Clerval desired the intercourse of the men of genius and talent who flourished at this time. But this was with me a secondary object. I was principally occupied with the means of obtaining the information necessary for the completion of my promise, and quickly availed myself of the letters of introduction that I had brought with me, addressed to the most distinguished natural philosophers. If this journey had taken place during my days of study and happiness, it would have afforded me inexpressible pleasure, but a blight had come over my existence, and I only visited these people for the sake of the information they might give me on the subject in which my interest was so terribly profound. Company was irksome to me. When alone, I could fill my mind with the sights of heaven and earth. The voice of Henry soothed me, and I could thus cheat myself into a transitory peace. But busy, uninteresting, joyous faces brought back despair to my heart. I saw an insurmountable barrier placed between me and my fellow men. This barrier was sealed with the blood of William and Justine, and to reflect on the events connected with those names filled my soul with anguish. But in Clerval, I saw the image of my former self. He was inquisitive and anxious to gain experience and instruction. The difference of manners which he observed was to him an inexhaustible source of instruction and amusement. He was also pursuing an object he had long had in view. His design was to visit India. In the belief that he had in his knowledge of its previous languages, and in the views he had taken of its society, the means of materially assisting the progress of European colonization and trade. In Britain only could he further the execution of his plan? He was forever busy, and the only check to his employments was my sorrowful and dejected mind. I tried to conceal this as much as possible, that I might not debar him from the pleasures natural to one who was entering on a new scene of life, undisturbed by any care or bitter recollection. I often refused to accompany him, alleging another engagement. I tell you what, the weather changes, and I don't think I've got allergies, but I'm like, my nose is so stuffy. Hello, welcome to our new fishies. I hope you are enjoying this reading of Frankenstein. Got a cold? I hope not. It's like summer. But my nose is all like stuffed up, even though I don't usually get allergies, but it's also summer. Like, what? This doesn't make any sense. And my nose isn't running. I'm just like really stuffy. I often refused to accompany him, alleging another engagement, that I might remain alone. I now also began to collect the materials necessary for my new creation, and this was to me like the torture of single drops of water continually falling on the head. Every thought that was devoted to it was an extreme anguish, and every word that I spoke in allusion to it caused my lips to quiver and my heart to palpitate. After passing some months in London, we received a letter from a person in Scotland who had formerly been our visitor at Geneva. He mentioned the beauties of his native country, and asked if those were not sufficient allurements to induce us to prolong our journey as far north as Perth, where he resided. Clerval eagerly desired to accept this invitation, and I, although abhorred society, wished to view again mountains and streams, and all the wondrous works with which nature adorns her chosen dwelling places. We had arrived in England at the beginning of October, and it was now February. We accordingly determined to commence our journey towards the north at the expiration of another month. In this expedition we did not intend to follow the great road to Edinburgh, but to visit Windsor, Oxford, Matlock, and the Cumberland Lakes, resolving to arrive at the completion of this tour about the end of July. I packed up my chemical instruments and the materials I had collected, resolving to finish my labors in some obscure nook in the northern highlands of Scotland. We quitted London on the 27th of March and remained a few days at Windsor, rambling in its beautiful forest. This was a new scene to us mountaineers. The majestic oaks, the quantity of game, and the herds of stately deer were all novelties to us. From thence we proceeded to Oxford. As we entered the city, our minds were filled with the remembrance of the events that had been transacted there more than a century and a half before. It was here that Charles I had collected his forces. this city had remained faithful to him after the whole nation had forsaken his cause to join. Ugh. Have a good night, Chris. Thank you. Thank you for the gift. It was here that Charles I had collected his forces. This city had remained faithful to him after the whole nation had forsaken his cause to join the standard of Parliament and liberty. The memory of that unfortunate king and his companions, the amiable Falkland, the insolent Goring, his queen and son, gave a peculiar interest to every part of the city which they might be supposed to have inhabited. The spirit of elder days found a dwelling here, and we delighted to trace its footsteps. If these feelings had not found an imaginary gratification, the appearance of the city had yet in itself sufficient beauty to obtain our admiration. The colleagues are ancient and picturesque, the streets are almost magnificent, and the lovely Isis, which flows beside it through meadows of exquisite verdure, is spread forth into a placid expanse of waters, which reflects its majestic assemblage of towers and spires and domes, embosomed. I don't think that's correct. It is. Embosomed among aged trees. Hi, Rekai. Hi, Ottoman. Welcome. I enjoyed this scene, and yet my enjoyment was embittered by, and yet my enjoyment. Oh, my screen cut out. Okay. I enjoyed this, and yet my enjoyment was embittered both by the memory of the past and the anticipation of the future. I was formed for peaceful happiness. During my youthful days, discontent never visited my mind, and if I was ever overcome by ennui, the sight of what is beautiful in nature, or the study of what is excellent and sublime in the productions of man, could always interest my heart and communicate elasticity to my spirits. Excuse me. But I am a blasted tree. The bolt has entered my soul, and I felt then that I should survive to exhibit what I shall soon cease to be, a miserable spectacle of wrecked humanity, pitiable to others and intolerable to myself. We passed a considerable period at Oxford, rambling among its environs and endeavoring to identify every spot which might relate to the most animating epoch of English history. Our little voyages of discovery were often prolonged by the successive objects that presented themselves. We visited the tomb of the illustrious Hampden, and the field on which that patriot fell. For a moment my soul was elevated from its debasing and miserable fears to contemplate the divine ideas of liberty and self-sacrifice, of which these sites were the monuments and the rememberers. Were the monuments and the remembrancers. This is Frankenstein. I'm gonna take a drink of water. I encourage you to do the same. For an instant, I dared to shake off my chains and look around me with a free and lofty spirit. But the iron had eaten into my flesh, and I sank again, trembling and hopeless, into my miserable self. We left Oxford with regret and proceeded to Matlock, which was our next place of rest. The country in the neighborhood of this village resembled, to a greater degree, the scenery of Switzerland, but everything is on a lower scale, and the green hills want the crown of distant white Alps, which always attended on the piney mountains of my native country. We visited the wondrous cave and the little cabinets of natural history, where the curiosities were disposed in the same manner as in the collections of Cerveau. Okay, well, I don't have a... Oh, I see you guys are, one person is working on the puzzle. Best of luck to you. Did you turn down the mic gain? When? Cerveau. Interesting. I don't know this word and I'm not very familiar with it. Is Cerveau... where's the freaking thing? Okay. There's this. Here we go. Paste. What is... I don't know how to pronounce that. Hi, Wraith. What is happening? I am reading Frankenstein. Stream ratio? I don't know what that means either. Have a good night, Nook Boss. I hope that I can help you fall asleep. Alright. We'll go back to reading. I'll just... I think Chamonix... Cervois? Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I'll just take a shot in the dark. We visited the wondrous cave and the little cabinets of natural history, where the curiosities were disposed in the same manner as in the collections at Cerveau and Chamonix. The latter name made me tremble when they pronounced by Henry, and I hastened to quit Matlock, with which that terrible scene was thus associated. From Derby, still journeying northwards, we passed 2 months in Cumberland and Westmoreland. I could now almost fancy myself among the Swiss mountains. I could now almost fancy myself among the Swiss mountains, the little patches of snow which yet lingered on the northern sides of the mountains, the lakes, and the dashing of the rocky streams were all familiar and dear sights to me. Here, also, we made some acquaintances who almost contrived to cheat me into happiness. The delight of Clerval was proportionably greater than mine. His mind expanded in the company of men of talent, and he found in his own nature greater capacities and resources than he could have imagined himself to have possessed while he associated with his inferiors. I could pass my life here. He said to me, and among these mountains I should scarcely regret Switzerland and the Rhine. But he found that a traveler's life is one that includes much pain amidst its enjoyments. His feelings are forever on the stretch, and when he begins to sink into repose, he finds himself obliged to quit that on which he rests. He finds himself obliged to quit that on which he rests in pleasure for something new, which again engages his attention, and which also he forsakes for other novelties. We had scarcely visited the various lakes of Cumberland and Westmoreland, and conceived an affection for some of the inhabitants, when the period of our appointment with our Scotch friend approached, and we left them to travel on. For my own part, I was not sorry. I had now neglected my promise for some time, and I feared the effects of the demon's disappointment. He might remain in Switzerland and wreak his vengeance on my relatives. This idea pursued me and tormented me at every moment from which I might otherwise have snatched repose and peace. I waited for my letters with feverish impatience. If they were delayed, I was miserable and overcome by 1,000 fears. And when they arrived and I saw the superscription of Elizabeth or my father, I hardly dared to read or ascertain my fate. Sometimes I thought that the fiend had followed me, and might expedite my reminiscence by murdering my companion. When these thoughts possessed me, I would not quit Henry for a moment, but followed him as his shadow, to protect him from the fancied rage of his destroyer. I felt as if I had committed some great crime, the consciousness of which haunted me. I was guiltless, but I had indeed drawn down a horrible curse upon my head, as mortal as that of crime. I visited Edinburgh with languid eyes and mind, and yet that city might have interested the most unfortunate being. Clerval did not like it so well as Oxford, for the antiquity of the latter city was more pleasing to him. But the beauty and regularity of the new town in Edinburgh, its romantic castle and its environs, the most delighted in the world, Arthur's Seat, St. Bernard's Well, and the Pentland Hills, compensated him for the change and filled him with cheerfulness and and admiration. But I was impatient to arrive at the termination of my journey. Edinburgh. Okay. I visited Edinburgh with languid eyes and mind. And then the next sentence starts too. Hi, Tars. We left Edinburgh in a week, passing through Cupar, St. Andrews, and along the banks of the Tay to Perth, where our friend expected us. But I was in no mood to laugh and talk with strangers. Or enter into their feelings or plans with the good humor expected from a guest. That's one very long sentence, Jesus. I wish I could breathe. And you wouldn't even believe that I've actually, I have allergy stuff, and I've tried my allergy stuff today. But I guess that was a few hours ago. But I was in no mood to laugh and talk with strangers, or enter into their feelings or plans with the good humor expected from a guest. And accordingly, I told Clerval that I wished to make the tour of Scotland alone. Do you, said I, enjoy yourself, and let this be our rendezvous. Do you, said I, enjoy yourself, and let this be our rendezvous. I may be absent a month or two, but do not interfere with my motions, I entreat you. Leave me to peace and solitude for a short time, and when I return, I hope it will be with a lighter heart, more congenial to your own temper. Henry wished to dissuade me, but seeing me bent on this plan... Really, stomach? Henry wished to dissuade me, but seeing me bent on this plan, ceased to remonstrate. He entreated me to write often. I had rather be with you, he said, in your solitary rambles than these Scotch people, whom I do not know. Hasten, then, my dear friend, to return, that I may again feel myself somewhat at home, which I cannot do in your absence. Having parted from my friend, I determined to visit some remote spot of Scotland and finish my work in solitude. I did not doubt but that the monster followed me and would not... I did not doubt but that the monster followed me and would discover himself to me when I should have finished, that he might receive his companion. With this resolution, I traversed the northern highlands and fixed on one of the remotest of the Orkneys? I am no thoughts in my Orkneys. Okay, so I was correct. Thank you, Jeb. You know these big words. I don't. Where the puffins live. Big deep breath. With this resolution, I traversed the northern highlands and fixed on one of the remoteness of the Orkneys as the scene of my labors. It was a place fitted for such work, being hardly more than a rock whose high sides were continually beaten upon by the waves. The soil was barren, scarcely affording pasture for a few miserable cows, and oatmeal for its inhabitants, which consisted of 5 persons, whose gaunt and scraggy limbs gave tokens of their miserable fare, vegetables and bread when they indulged in such luxuries, and even fresh water was to be procured from the mainland, which was about 5 miles distant. On the whole island there were but 3 miserable huts, and one of these was vacant when I arrived. This I hired. It contained but 2 rooms, and these exhibited all the squalidness of the most miserable penury. The thatch had fallen in, the walls were unplastered, and the door was off the hinges. I ordered it to be repaired, bought some furniture, and took possession, an incident which would doubtless have been occupied some surprise. No, that's not the sentence either. An incident which would doubtless have occasioned some surprise had not all the senses of the cottagers been benumbed by want and squalid poverty. As it was, I lived ungazed at and unmolested, hardly thanked for the pittance of food and clothes which I gave, so much does suffering blunt even the coarsest sensations of men. In this retreat, I devoted the morning to labor, but in the evening, when the weather permitted, I walked on the stony beach of the sea to listen to the waves as they roared and dashed at my feet. It was a monotonous yet ever-changing scene. I thought of Switzerland. It was far different from this desolate and appalling landscape. Its hills are covered with vines, and its cottages are scattered thickly in the plains. Its fair lakes reflect a blue and gentle sky, and when troubled by the winds, their tumult is but as the play of a lively infant when compared to the roarings of the giant ocean. In this manner, I distributed my occupations when I first arrived, but as I proceeded in my labor, it became every day more horrible and irksome to me. Sometimes I could not prevail on myself to enter my laboratory for several days, and at other times I toiled day and night in order to complete my work. It was, indeed, a filthy process in which I was engaged. During my first experiment, a kind of enthusiastic frenzy had blinded me to the horror of my employment. My mind was intently fixed on the consummation of my labor, and my eyes were shut to the horror of my proceedings. But now I went to it in cold blood, and my heart often sickened at the work of my hands. Thus situated, employed in the most detestable occupation, immersed in a solitude where nothing could for an instant call my attention from the actual scene in which I was engaged, my spirits became unequal. I grew restless and nervous. Every moment I feared to meet my persecutor. Every moment I feared to meet my persecutor. Sometimes I sat with my eyes fixed on the ground, fearing to raise them lest they should encounter the object which I so much dreaded to behold. I feared to wander from the sight of my fellow creatures, lest, when alone, he should come to claim his companion. In the meantime, I worked on, and my labor was already considerably advanced. I looked towards its completion with a tremulous and eager hope, which I dared not trust myself to question, but which was intermixed with obscure forebodings of evil that made my heart sicken in my bosom. That is the end of chapter 19. Excuse me. Chat. Big stretchies. Big stretchies. Big stretchies. Very loud tummy rumblies. I don't like my water. I tried a different mix. I don't like it. I really don't like it. Let's see, how many pages is this? Chapter 20. And, okay, it's 10 pages. Who's ready for the next chapter? Let's see, we don't have anybody on the red platform. Jap is ready. Hello, Pan is ready. It seems like a quiet day, huh? Northern Light and Dova are ready. Beans is ready. I think we're ready to read. Chapter 20. I sat one evening in my laboratory. The sun had set, and the moon was just rising from the sea. I had not sufficient light for my employment, and I remained idle, in a pause of consideration of which I should leave for my labor. In a pause of consideration of whether I should leave my labor for the night, or hasten its conclusion by the unremitting attention to it. As I sat, a train of reflection occurred to me which led me to consider the effects of what I was doing now. 3 years before, I was engaged in the same manner, and had created a fiend whose unparalleled barbarity had desolated my heart and filled it forever with bitterest remorse. I was now about to form another being of whose dispositions I was alike ignorant. She might become 10,000 times more malignant than her mate and delight, for its own sake, in murder and wretchedness. He had sworn to quit the neighborhood of man and hide himself in deserts, but she had not, and she, who in all probability was to become a thinking and reasoning animal, might refuse to comply with the compact made before her creation. They might even hate each other. The creature who already lived loathed his own deformity, and might he not conceive a greater abhorrence for it when it came before his eyes in the female form? She also might turn with disgust from him to a superior beauty of man. She might quit him, and he be a... She also might turn with disgust from him to the superior beauty of man. She might quit him, and he be again alone, exasperated by the fresh provocation of being deserted by one of his own species. Good job, puzzlers. Even if they were to leave Europe and inhabit the deserts of the New World, yet one of the first results of those sympathies for which the demon thirsted would be children, and a race of devils would be propagated upon the earth, who might make the very existence of the species of man a condition precarious and full of terror. Had I right for my own benefit, to inflict this curse upon everlasting generations? I had before been moved by the sophisms of the being I had created. I had been struck senseless by his fiendish threats, but now for the first time the wickedness of my promise burst upon me. I shuddered to think that future ages might curse me as their pest, whose selfishness had not hesitated to buy its own peace at the price, perhaps, of the existence of the whole human race. I trembled, and my heart failed within me, when, on looking up, I saw by the light of the moon the demon at the casement. A ghastly grin wrinkled his lips as he gazed on me, where I sat fulfilling the task he had allotted to me. Yes, he had followed me in my travels. He had loitered in forests, hid himself in caves, or taken refuge in wide desert heaths. And he now came to mark my progress and claim the fulfillment of my promise. As I looked on him, his countenance expressed the utmost extent of malice and treachery. I thought with a sensation of madness on my purpose of creating another I've got an itchy. Okay. I thought with a sensation of madness on my promise of creating another like to him, and trembling with passion, tore to pieces the thing on which I was engaged. The wretch saw me destroy the creature on whose future existence he depended for happiness, and with a howl of devilish despair and revenge, withdrew. I left the room, and locking the door, made a solemn vow in my own heart never to resume my labors, and then, with trembling steps, I sought my own apartment. I was alone. Never were near me to dissipate the gloom and relieve me from the sickening oppression of the most terrible reveries. Is anyone interested in having another puzzle? Because if the answer is no, then I will hide the puzzle from the screen. Okay, always down for another puzzle. Several hours passed, and I remained near my window gazing on the sea. It was almost motionless, for the winds were hushed, and all nature reposed under the eye of the quiet moon. A few fishing vessels alone specked the water, and now and then the gentle breeze wafted the sound of voices as the fishermen called out to one another. I felt the silence, although I was hardly conscious of its extreme profundity, until my ear was suddenly arrested by the paddling of oars near the shore, and a person landed close to the house. In a few minutes after, I heard the creaking of my door as if someone endeavored to open it softly. I trembled from head to foot. I felt a presentiment of who it was and wished to rouse one of the peasants who dwelt in a cottage not far from mine. But I was overcome by the sensation of helplessness, so often felt in frightful dreams, when you in vain endeavored to fly from an impending danger, and was rooted to the spot. Presently I heard the sound of footsteps along the passage. The door opened, and the wretch whom I dreaded appeared. Shutting the door, he approached me and said in a smothered voice, "You have destroyed the work. You have destroyed the work which you began. What is that? What is it? What is it that you intend? Do you dare to break your promise? I have endured toil and misery. I left Switzerland to you. I crept along the shores of Rhine, along its willow islands and over the summits of its hills. I have dwelt many months in the heaths of England and among the deserts of Scotland. I have endured calculable fatigue and cold and hunger. Do you dare destroy my hopes? Begone! I do not break my promise. Begone! I do break my promise. Never will I create another like yourself, equal in deformity and wickedness. Slave, I before reasoned with you, and you have proved yourself unworthy of my condescension. Slave, I before reasoned with you, but you have proved yourself unworthy of my why am I suddenly struggling with this word? Unworthy of my condescension. Fuck. Worthy of my condescension. Hi, Pika. Remember that I have power. You believe yourself miserable, but I can make you so wretched that the light of day will be hateful to you. You are my creator, but I am your master. Obey. The hour of my resolution is past, and the period of your power has arrived. Your threats cannot move me to do an act of wickedness, but they confirm me in a determination. They confirm me in a determination of not creating you a companion in vice. Hi, Carter. But they confirm me in a determination of not creating you a companion in vice. Shall I, in cool blood, set loose upon the earth a demon whose delight is in death and wickedness? Begone. I am firm, and your words will only exasperate my rage. The monster saw my determination in my face and gnashed his teeth with an impotence of anger. "Shall each man," cried he, "find a wife for his bosom, and each beast have his mate, and I be alone? I had feelings of affection, and they were requited by detestation and scorn. Man, you may hate, but beware. Your hours will pass in dread and misery, and soon the bolt will fall which must ravish from you your happiness forever. Are you to be happy while I grovel in the intensity of my wretchedness? You can blast my other passions, but revenge remains, revenge henceforth, dearer than light or food. I may die, but first you, my tyrant and tormentor, shall curse the sun that gazes on your misery. Beware, for I am fearless and therefore powerful. I will watch with the willness of a snake, that I may sting with its venom. Man, you shall repent of the injuries you inflict." Devil, cease, and do not poison the air with these sounds of malice. I have declared my resolution to you, and I am no coward to bend beneath words. Leave me. I am inexorable. It is well. I go, but remember, I shall be with you on your wedding night. I started forward and exclaimed, "Villain! Before you sign my death warrant, be sure that you are yourself safe." I would have seized him, but he eluded me and quitted the house with precipitation. In a few moments I saw him in his boat, which shot across the waters with an arrowy swiftness, and was soon lost amidst the waves. All was again silent, but his words rang in my ear. I burned with rage to pursue the murderer of my peace and precipitate him into the ocean. I walked up and down my room hastily and perturbed, while my imagination conjured up 1,000 images to torment me and sting me. Why had I not followed him and closed with him in the mortal strife? But I had suffered him to depart, and he had directed his course towards the mainland. I shuddered to think who might be the next victim sacrificed to his insatiate revenge. And then I thought again of his words, "I will be with you on your wedding night." That, then, was the period fixed for the fulfillment of my destiny. In that hour I should die and at once satisfy and extinguish his malice. The prospect did not move me to fear, yet when I thought of my beloved Elizabeth, of her tears and endless sorrow, when she should find her lover so barbarously snatched from her, tears, The first I had shed for many months streamed from my eyes, and I resolved not to fall before my enemy without a bitter struggle. The night passed away, and the sun rose from the ocean. My feelings became calmer, if it may be called calmness, when the violence of rage sinks into the depths of despair. I left the house, the horrid scene of last night's contention, and walked on the beach of the sea, which I almost regarded as an insuperable barrier between me and my fellow creatures. Nay, a wish that should... Nay, a wish that such should prove the fact stole across me. I desired that I might pass my life on that barren rock, wearily, it is true, but uninterrupted by any sudden shock of misery. If I returned, it was to be sacrificed, or to see those whom I most loved die under the grasp of a demon whom I had myself created. I walked about the isle like a restless spectre, separated from all it loved and miserable in the separation. When it became noon and the sun rose higher, I lay down on the grass and was overpowered by a deep sleep. I had been awake the whole of the preceding night. My nerves were agitated, and my eyes inflamed by watching and misery. The sleep into which now I sank refreshed me, and when I awoke, I again felt as if I belonged to a race of human beings like myself, and I began to reflect upon which had passed with greater composure. Yet still the words of the fiend rang in my ears like a death knell. They appeared like a dream, yet distinct and oppressive as reality. The sun had far descended, and I still sat on the shore, satisfying my appetite, which had become ravenous, with an oaten cake, when I saw a fishing boat land close to me, and one of the men brought me a packet. It contained letters from Geneva, and one from Clerval, entreating me to join him. He said that he was wearing away his time fruitlessly where he was, that letters from the friends he had formed in London desired his return to complete the negotiation they had entered into for his Indian enterprise. He could not any longer delay his departure, but as his journey to London might be followed, even sooner than he now conjectured, by his longer voyage, he entreated me to bestow as much of my society on him as I could spare. He besought me, therefore, to leave my solitary isle and to meet him at Perth, that we might proceed southwards together. This letter in a degree recalled me to life, and I determined to quit my island at the expiration of 2 days. Yet, before I departed, there was a task to perform, on which I shuddered to reflect. I must pack up my chemical instruments, and for that purpose I must enter the room which had been the scene of my odious work, and I must handle those utensils, the sight of which was sickening to me. The next morning at daybreak, I summoned sufficient courage and unlocked the door of my laboratory. The remains of the half-finished creature, whom I had destroyed, lay scattered on the floor, and I almost felt as if I had mangled the living flesh of a human being. I paused to collect myself, and then entered the chamber. With trembling hands, I conveyed the instruments out of the room, but I reflected that I ought not to leave the relics of my work to excite the horror and suspicion of the peasants, and I accordingly put them into a basket with a great quantity of stones, and laying them up, determined to throw them into the sea that very night. And in the meantime, I sat upon the beach, employed in cleaning and arranging my chemical apparatus. Nothing could be more complete than the alteration that had taken place in my feelings since the night of the appearance of the demon. I had before regarded my promise with a gloomy despair as a thing that, with whatever consequences, must be fulfilled. But I now felt as if a film had been taken from before my eyes, and that I, for the first time, saw clearly. The idea of renewing my labors did not for one instant occur to me. The threat I had heard weighed on my thoughts, but I did not reflect that a voluntary act of mine could avert it. I had resolved in my own mind that to create another like the fiend I had first made would be an act of the basest and most atrocious selfishness, and I banished from my mind every thought that could lead to a different conclusion. Between 2 and 3 in the morning, the moon rose, and then I, putting a basket aboard a little skiff, sailed out about 4 miles from the shore. The scene was perfectly solitary. A few boats were returning towards land, but I sailed away from them. I felt as if I was about the commission of a dreadful crime, and avoided the shuddering anxiety in the encounter with my fellow creatures. At one time the moon, which had been before clear, at one time the moon, which had before been clear, was suddenly overspread by a thick cloud. I took advantage of the moment of darkness, and cast my basket into the sea, and listened to the gurgling sound as it sank, and then sailed away from the spot. The sky became clouded, but the air was pure, although chilled by the northeast breeze that was then rising. But it refreshed me and filled me with such agreeable sensations that I resolved to prolong my stay on the water, and fixing the rudder in a direct position, stretched myself at the bottom of the boat. Clouds hid the moon, everything was obscure, and I only heard the sound of the boat as its keel cut through the waves. The murmur lulled me, and in a short time I slept soundly. I do not know how long I remained in this situation, but when I awoke, I found that the sun had already mounted considerably. The wind was high, and the waves continually threatened the safety of my little skiff. I found that the wind was northeast, and must have driven me far from the coast from which I had embarked. I endeavored to change my course, but quickly found that if I again made the attempt, the boat would be instantly filled with water. Thus situated, my only resource was to drive before the wind. I confess that I felt a few sensations of terror. I had no compass with me and was so slenderly acquainted with the geography of this part of the world that the sun was of little benefit to me. I might be driven into the wide Atlantic and feel all the tortures of starvation, or be swallowed up by an immeasurable waters that roared and buffeted me. I had already been out many hours and felt the torment of burning thirst, a prelude to my other sufferings. I looked on the heavens, which were covered by clouds that flew before the wind, only to be replaced by others. I looked upon the sea. It was to be my grave. "Fiend," I exclaimed, "your task is already fulfilled." I thought of Elizabeth, my father, and of Clerval, all left behind, on whom the monster might satisfy his sanguinary and merciless passions. This idea plunged me into a reverie so despairing and frightful that even now, when the scene is on the point of closing before me forever, I shudder to reflect it. Some hours passed thus, but by degrees, as the sun declined towards the horizon, the wind died away into a gentle breeze, and the sea became free from breakers. But these gave place to a heavy swell. I felt sick and hardly able to hold the rudder, when suddenly I saw a line of high land towards the south. Almost spent, as I was, by fatigue and the dreadful suspense I had endured for several hours, this sudden certainty of life rushed like a flood of warm joy to my heart, and tears gushed from my eyes. How mutable are our feelings, and how strange is that clinging love we have of life, even in the excess of misery. I constructed another sail with a part of my dress, and eagerly steered my course towards the land. It had a wild and rocky appearance, but as I approached nearer, I easily perceived the traces of cultivation. I saw vessels near the shore, and found myself suddenly transported back to the neighborhood of civilized man. I carefully traced the windings of the land, and hailed a steeple which I at length saw issuing from behind a small promontory. As I was in a state of extreme debility, I resolved to sail directly towards the town, as a place where I could most easily procure nourishment. Fortunately, I had money with me. As I turned the promontory, I perceived a small neat town and a good harbor, which I entered, my heart bounding with joy at my unexpected escape. Fortunately, I had my money with me. I didn't even say that right. Jesus Christ. Fortunately, I had money with me. As I turned the promontory, I perceived a small, neat town and a good harbor, which I entered, my heart bounding with joy at my unexpected escape. As I was occupied in fixing the boat and arranging the sails, several people crowded towards the spot. They seemed much surprised at my appearance, but instead of offering me any assistance, whispered together with gestures that at any other time might have produced in me a slight sensation of alarm. As it was, I merely remarked that they spoke English, and I therefore addressed them in that language. "My good friends," said I, "will you be so kind as to tell me the name of this town and inform me where I am?" "You will know that soon enough," replied a man with a hoarse voice. "Maybe you are come to a place that will not prove much to your taste, and you will not be consulted as to your quarters, I promise you." I was exceedingly surprised on receiving so rude an answer from a stranger, and I was also disconcerted on perceiving the frowning and angry countenances of his companions. "Why do you answer me so roughly?" I replied. "Surely it is not the custom of Englishmen to receive strangers so hospitably. Surely it is not the custom of Englishmen to receive strangers so inhospitably. That's a word. "I do not know," said the man, "what the custom of the English may be, but it is the custom of the Irish to hate villains." While this strange dialogue continued, I perceived the crowd rapidly increase. Their faces expressed a mixture of curiosity and anger, which annoyed and, in some degree, alarmed me. I inquired the way to the inn, but no one replied. I then moved forward, and a murmuring sound arose from the crowd as they followed and surrounded me, when an ill-looking man approaching tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Come, sir, you must follow me to Mr. Kerwin's to give an account for yourself." "Come, sir, you must follow me to Mr. Kerwin's to give an account of yourself." Who is Mr. Kerwin? Why am I to give an account of myself? Is this not a free country? Aye, sir, free enough for honest folks. Mr. Kerwin is magistrate, and you are to give an account of the death of a gentleman who was found murdered here last night. This answer startled me, but I presently recovered myself. I was innocent. That could easily be proved. Accordingly, I followed my conductor in silence, and was led to one of the best houses in town. I was ready to sink from fatigue and hunger, but being surrounded by a crowd, I thought it politic to rouse all my strength, that no physical debility might be construed into apprehension or conscious guilt. Hello, I am reading Frankenstein. You're welcome to solve a puzzle or sit back and relax and just enjoy. Or perhaps you just like listening to my voice and it helps you fall asleep. Little did I then expect the calamity that was in a few moments to overwhelm me and extinguish in horror and despair all fear of ignominy or death. I must pause here, for it requires all my fortitude to recall the memory of the frightful events which I am about to relate, in proper detail, to my recollection. That is the end of chapter 20. You're reading? Yes. I read books and stories on stream most of the time. Today we did chapters 19 and 20 of Frankenstein. And let's see, we currently on chapter 21. 21 to 22 is going to be 11 pages. I think I could do that. Thank you. I really need to swap out my water. I'm really not liking this. I tried to make you know, a little special blend, combine one electrolyte with another electrolyte, but it just didn't work. How many chapters are there? There are 24, so we are actually getting closer to the ending. Yes, we are actually pretty close to the end. And I believe for us that's going to mean that the next book we're going to read is, I think, Anne of Green Gables. I missed out on so much. Oh, it's all right. I actually started reading Frankenstein like over a year ago. So it'll be a couple of months before the audiobook does go up on my channel. But eventually the audiobook will be edited and uploaded. Water and vodka is the same? No, it is not the same. Let me take a look at something. How often? I am usually live Thursday and Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time Zone. So for context, right now it is 7:24 p.m. On Saturdays, I am live at 3 p.m. Eastern Time Zone. So I do that because I want our European viewers to be able to enjoy the stream a little bit longer. Hi, ASMR Mans. All right. Put a 1 in chat if you are ready to resume the reading. You're a Eurofish? Hi! We actually have a lot of fishies all around the world. It's always it always amazes me the number of individuals that we get that are like just speckled across the world. It's beautiful. We've got a surprising amount of fishies in Germany, and I think the Netherlands. I know at least 2 that are based in India. I think we've got 2 that are Australian. At least 1 is in the Philippines. And we've got a handful in Brazil. Jap is ready, Anxiety is ready, Zalakas is ready, Brainsa is ready, Ringmistress is ready, Dova, hi Rostar is ready, One, Fizban is ready, from Belgium, yes, we've got Belgium, we have so many fishies all across the world, and I love it. I love getting to read to you. Irish? Any Lovecraft books in the future? Oh yeah, please feel free to recommend them. whichever one that you are most interested in hearing. I do have, for context, I do have a full-time job, so I don't get to do as much reading or as much streaming as I wish I could, but I do want to eventually read all of the classics. It would be I want to say it's an unrealistic goal, but it's an unrealistic goal of mine to read all of like the major classics and have audiobooks of them, like up on my YouTube channel, which I am reminded yet again that YouTube rejected my application. But you can barely hear me? Oh, okay. Do I need to turn my microphone sound up? There. So if you didn't hear what I said earlier, that was, unfortunately, my monetization application. It's complicated and I won't explain the whole thing, but YouTube has rejected me yet again for monetization on YouTube. So I still not getting paid, which is very frustrating. Why did, yeah, I wish I knew why. I have been trying to get monetization for my YouTube channel since November, and it's just not working. You have to set up like an account thing, and you have to essentially apply, and once you apply you get the account, and I don't know what's wrong, but you can't even ask their support, because their support people will tell you that they're not allowed to tell you why you're rejected. And so all you can do is just guess. My name is the same on all platforms. It's very upsetting. I can't even begin to explain. Hi, Za. I can't even begin to explain how upsetting it is to... It's June, and I still have not received, a single dollar from all of my hard work on my YouTube channel. And if worse comes to worse, I don't know if this is just how desperate this is gonna be, and I don't know if this is ever gonna happen, but the absolute worst case scenario is that I would have to just literally delete my channel and start all over again. I am serious that it is just that bad. You cannot get Google support. You cannot get YouTube support to say or do anything. How long have you been on YouTube? Several years. I've been streaming consistently for the past 5 years. And I have been posting YouTube videos semi-consistently for the past 3 years. Though the account in question is like 13 years old. No. Yes. It's very upsetting. So, I mean, just imagine. My channel's not all that big. So, yeah, sure. I probably could have made, I don't know, maybe like $300 from YouTube ad revenue by now. Maybe. So if anybody knows anybody who works with YouTube, please let me know, because I am just so frustrated and very upset about it. Let's see. I'm gonna see if there's a special way of pronouncing this name. I guess not. We'll find a way. I don't know that I have any hope anymore. And I know that that's not something people want to hear, but I have spent like a uncomfortable amount of hours trying to fix this. I think that I know that there's still plenty of time. I know that there's still 20 minutes before the end of stream, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and end early. How's the comparison to TikTok? TikTok is pretty bad. TikTok is pretty not fantastic. At least with YouTube, like I get ad revenue and all of that. With TikTok, we are solely based on people giving you gifts. That's kind of like, you know, comparing it to Twitch, where with Twitch streams, I'm in the ASMR category, so I'm not likely gonna get anything from ad revenue anyway. I might get a couple of cents per month in ad revenue. With TikTok, I might get $4 in a month. That's not likely. But sometimes I get an email from TikTok being like, congratulations, you got 40 cents. I'm like, wow. Hi. Why are you gonna end early? Salutations, baddie. I love the intro. I'm doing good. I'm quite sleepy and low energy and yeah. How are you? Tomorrow I will be playing Paralives. I know. I'd be leaving early, but I think that right now I should just go lay down and go to sleep. I just watched, I've watched enough to fall asleep. Well, I will be back again tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern Time Zone, and I will be playing Paralives, which is a new game that came out recently. So, I do hope that you come back and you join me for some more Paralives. Yes, it is similar to The Sims. Already got my mail late? Oh, yeah. It's, I think over here the sun is still up. Where we're going to be streaming, I simultaneously stream on Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok. All the time. So the chat that you see on screen is combined chat. We're spending half a stream making character creator again. That's actually really interesting. I noticed that people were more interested in watching character creation than the actual game. Do you guys not want to watch me play the game? Where do you prefer I watch from? Watching on Twitch is always helpful because at least that viewership does work towards a particular goal. That goal being Twitch partner. You have to have a 75 average viewership. So there has to be an average of 75 people watching my stream for 12 streams. So 6 in a 30-day period and 6 in the previous 30-day period. So if people are willing to watch on Twitch, I would greatly appreciate it, but I don't pressure you. It's all your personal preference. Yes, my username is the same on all platforms. And this is the part where we say our goodnights, our goodbyes, and our see you tomorrows. I'll be back again tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern Time Zone, to play Paralives, and I hope that you'll join me for that. Exclamation point raid if you are on Twitch. We are going to raid out into somebody. I don't know who. You know what? Let's go visit Cozy. Let's go hang out with Cozy. If you are not watching on Twitch, the stream is just going to end for you, but please join the Discord server. You will be notified when I go live or when I post social media videos. It is your choice what you want to be notified for. So until next time, please drink your water, eat your food, be kind to yourself and others, and I hope you sleep very well. Good night.